Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and welcome to the Inibuilds Airbus A350. I'm really happy I can show you this magnificent aircraft today. I've had it for the past couple of days under strict NDA, but I could do a first couple of flights with it, and I'm really looking forward to show it to you today. Now we're standing on the maintenance ramp over here in Toulouse at the Airbus factory, and we're going to take it out for a little test flight, testing some of the systems and how the aircraft flies to answer the question, did Inibuilds really manage to pull off creating a good rendition of the most sophisticated airliner of its time? Well, join me and find out. Before we start though, a small little word over here. As you guys know, I'm a type-rated Airbus A330 pilot, and the A330 and A350 do share a common type rating. However, there is a little bit of differences training required when transitioning from one type to the other, so while I'm proficient on the Airbus A330, I haven't had that differences training. Namely, it comprises of 4 simulator sessions of around 4 hours each. However, I did manage to get hold of an Airbus A350 certified instructor who is allowed to do that differences training, and I went over the plane with him. He gave me some instructions, but nonetheless, even though I am technically type rated on the A350, I haven't flown an actual A350. So just keep that in mind in the background of the videos before people are running to Reddit and complaining that, oh, that guy is so utterly incompetent. Alright, that much out of the way, let's go ahead and start with a look at the external model. Now, Inibuilds have once again done a superb job, just like we would expect from them. First of all, we're getting very good frame rates, but secondly, they did manage to make a beautiful model of this magnificent airliner. Now, not only did they create a superb looking model, but there are loads of interactions on the screen that we have available. For instance, if we go down to the avionics compartment door down here, we can click on that and we can open it up or close it again, but more on that later on. Likewise, when we go a little bit further to the back of the aircraft, there's lots of things we can do down here on the model, such as, for example, opening and closing the engine cowlings just by clicking on them. Beautiful model, by the way. But likewise, you can do the same with a lot of the flaps that we've got available on our aircraft's fuselage. Now, many of them, for instance, are over here for refilling hydraulic quantities and stuff like that. But we also do have the refueling hatch model down here, which is quite a cool thing. So, in general, if you go down here, you'll find lots of interesting things. So we've got the refueling panel down here. We can even switch it on to the auto refuel. Aircraft is powered off right now, so nothing's happening here, but that's a pretty cool thing that we have available. Likewise, if you wanted to open the gear door, well, you've seen the Inibuilds trailers. You know that the plane can do that. So, what am I about to tell you here? Well, basically, it's an awesome looking aircraft. They do have things like the tires wearing down, like the brake wear indicator pins wearing down, so all that good stuff is implemented down here. Overall, a really good looking model. Absolutely no doubt about that. One of the best in business at the moment. So, with that out of the way, let's go back to the front and start to get ready for our flight. So what are we going to do today? We are standing on the ramp in Toulouse in the Airbus factory, as mentioned before, and basically we're going to take the aircraft out for a little ride. We'll try out some of the protections to see how well the systems work, and basically we're going to fly from Toulouse to Toulouse in order to test our aircraft out. So let's go inside now and see how the aircraft is going to look from the inside. So, some of you keep asking me how I do these walkaround things. Basically, I did move the cockpit view to the outside over here, because luckily Inibuilds did not build any walls for the cameras into the aircraft, so you can just move around like this, transition smoothly between the walk-around modes, which is quite cool, so that way we're able to board the aircraft. By the way, look at those lovely reflections over here, that's just really good modeling. So coming inside, we do have the flight attendant panel over here modeled, as you guys know. So over here we can control, for instance, the doors. If we go over here, we're able to close that entry door. We're even able to arm or disarm it over here, so all that good stuff is basically implemented. Alright, so let's now go to where we really want to go. That's of course the flight deck. So expect a little tour of the cabin a little bit later on in this video. For now, let's get inside here and let's start getting ready. Overall, a beautiful model of the flight deck that we have over here. Let's go ahead and close up that door, because that way the galley doesn't load anymore and we're getting a little bit better frames. They really managed to optimize that very well in FS 2024. Overall, frame rate is pretty good on this aircraft, so just to have that out of the way. Now let's take a seat and let's start powering our A350 up. So I'm not going to explain all the procedures in full detail in this video. This video is a little bit more of a demonstration here rather than anything else. However, rest assured, I will do a detailed tutorial series on the aircraft. So, lots of bing 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 when starting it up, that's kind of expected. And then, let's do the battery check, making sure that we have sufficient voltage. And that's looking pretty good. So that way batteries are coming back on. Okay, next up we can go down here, set up our RMPs, so 122-800. And yeah, you will probably notice that quite a bit of the flows we're doing over here are very similar to the Airbus A330, and you're absolutely right with that. Remember, it is a common type rating. So I'm not flying it with some inappropriate flows over here. I did take the time to go over all that kind of stuff, but much rather it simply is, yeah, designed to be flown like that. Alright, so everything going on the IRS panels. Then let's do a recall here for 3 seconds. Nothing comes up. Dispatch page, that's what I wanted to say. It's unfortunately not implemented at the moment, but hopefully soon. Well, and then we can do the fire test. Looking good, and then start up the APU. Now while the APU is starting, let's head right down into the OIS. The OIS, Onboard Information System, basically is our EFB, but with a lot of interaction, and Inibuilds really managed to pull this one off in a pretty nice manner. So we are flying the A350-900 here, imported from SimBrief already, Delta Alpha India X-Ray Quebec, on flight Airbus 359 from Toulouse to Toulouse. Now, let's go on and go into the OFP down here real quick and have a look at what we are going to do. So basically, our flight is going to lead us down southbound into the area just north of Barcelona. And over there we're going to do a little bit of air work, test out some of the abilities of the A350, and then we come back to Toulouse. Weather is very good everywhere, nothing to complain about at all. I did increase the zero fuel weight a little bit. Empty weight is pretty much 140 tons. I did increase it to 180 just to get us to a little bit more realistic landing weights later on, so that it doesn't look like we are floating in like a bird for the landing, but so that you get a good look at how the aircraft actually looks like in typical operations. So with that out of the way, let's go over to the load sheet over here, import our SimBrief data. And then I am going to load up a little bit more fuel here, because we do plan to do some air work. So let's take 15 tons. Alright, set zero fuel weight and set fuel. And that's everything loaded. You can see it's only included a couple of passengers here, and apart from that went for mostly cargo, since that is how I programmed it to be on SimBrief here. Alright, so with that done, let's go over into the takeoff performance. We're going to synchronize the SimBrief data over here, since we haven't set up the FMS just yet. Then synchronize the current weather, we are going to do a PAX off takeoff, and then we can hit compute down here. So, takeoff margin, or rather takeoff performance limit 320 tons, so we're absolutely good to go. Last thing here, let's go ahead and set up our charts. So we are departing Toulouse today. Let's go ahead and search for that, please. And in case you don't want to use the Lido charts that come with the sim by default, you can always go into the options, and down here you have the third-party options, and you have the OIS settings, and over here you can basically choose, like, do I want to use Lido charts, do I want to use Navigraph charts? Totally up to you. So right now I've selected Navigraph, let's use them for today. So we go for Toulouse, search that, and then we want our airport charts, which we have down here, we can pin those, and then we also want our departure chart. Let's see, we're flying the Rebu 7 Bravo departure today, so let's see if we can find that one. Rebu 7 Bravo, here it is, so let's go ahead and pin that as well. And that's our charts. So, really cool thing. Last but not least, on the en route chart, if you zoom in all the way over here, the long-time Navigraph users among you will no doubt be aware of that. You can actually get a live taxi map when you're all the way in. It takes a little while to download all that data from the servers, so don't be surprised if this does take a little while to actually get you all the way there. But here you are. So pretty cool that you can actually see all these down here. Very nice as a moving map, complementary to the ANF function that you have on your nav display anyway, but more on that later on. So with the APU now running, let's turn on the APU bleed, check the airflow norm and everything set up here, and then we can move down into the ECAM. Check sufficient oxygen, sufficient rain repellent, then we go down to the hydraulics, cross-check the hydraulic quantity, which they definitely have to refill before we take delivery of the aircraft. It's fine for the time being. And then we can check the engine oil. For that we gotta turn on the FADEC ground power. And we have 14.6 quarts, that's okay. They certainly have to refill it before the next long haul, but since we are just about doing our first acceptance flight over here, that's fine for the time being. Well then, the flaps are up, the speed brakes are retracted, and that checks with the levers, and the brake pressure accumulator is showing green on both systems. Perfect, and then let's go into the cockpit setup. As mentioned, I'm doing things a little bit quick here. This is not intended as a tutorial, but much rather this is intended as a demo of the aircraft itself. A more detailed tutorial is most certainly going to come at a later point in time. Alright, so let's see what the current weather conditions are. QNH 1019, 14 degrees, variable 4 knots. So let's set the ISOs 1019. Down here everything is already set. We'll be using system 1 today. Well, and then let's get right into the FMS. Now what's pretty cool, before we start with the actual FMS setup, if you just view your aircraft like this, if your screen is large enough, then you can very nicely have the OFP open on the OIS while programming your FMS down there. That's really, really cool. Just in order to be able to show you things in a little bit larger manner, I am going to use the in-sim flight plan today, because that kinda makes it a little bit nicer for all of you to actually be able to see what we're actually entering. So let's go. It's an A350-900 with a Trent XWB engines. The nav database is current at the time of this recording. It does store any pilot element that you have entered on a previous flight, so remember to delete these if you want to reassign certain waypoint names, for instance. Well, and then let's go on to the init page. So we are going to do a company flight plan request from SimBrief. So let's do that. And here we go, flight plan is downloading. This does take a little time, but when it is available you will see this, received company flight plan, and then you can press insert over here. So we've got Airbus 359er from Toulouse to Toulouse, alternate Bordeaux, cruise level initially 190. For the cruise temperature we gotta take that from here, so minus 18 degrees. We do have to override that, that's the real world software bug in the actual A350, which they did model, that's quite cool. Alright, so cost index 10, trip wind is okay, then let's move to the IRS page where we can check that all 3 IRSs are indeed in nav mode. Then down here we can select our departure. And we're planned on runway 32 left, so let's go ahead and select that down here. Our SID is the Rebu 7 Bravo, and we've got to find that down here on the list, so let's scroll through that. Here we go, Rebu 7 Bravo, and insert that. Now, we can quickly cross-check that the SID is actually accurate, so let's go to constraints over here. And then let's open our departure chart, and here we go. So the routing is straight ahead to Toulouse VOR, which is a flyover waypoint. We have that over here and over here. And then we make a right-hand turn towards Bravo Oscar 325, which is above 6,000. And then towards Galdo and onto Ribu above level 120. And that's gonna go right down here. Ribu above 120. Perfect, that's what we're looking for. Let's also go ahead and enter the arrival already. For the time being, we'll plan with runway 32 left. And we do plan an ILS approach. So our star is going to be the ASPAT 8 November arrival. So ASPAT 8 November, here it is. And let's take a very quick look into the terminal charts to see where that one ends. So ASPAT 8 November, that's going to be this chart right over here. We can pin that already. And it ends at Sulit. So let's go ahead and select the approach via Sulit. Okay, temporary flight plan and insert. Very well, then back to the init page and the nav aids, where we basically don't need to tune anything since we're operating on PBN for the entire flight. Fuel and load. So over here, let's start with the zero fuel weight. That's 180 tons. The zero fuel weight CG is right here on the load sheet at 30.9. So 30.9. And then the block fuel is 15 tons. Last but not least, let's update the alternate fuel and the final reserves, which are 2.9 and 2.4 respectively. So let's give it a moment to calculate here. There we go. So alternate. What did we say? 2.9. Yeah, that's already correctly calculated. Perfect. Last but not least, passenger number. We can enter, you know, if we want good ventilation, we'll just enter something large here. That's basically what you used to switch on the air conditioning panel on your A330s, where you would select the airflow. In the A350, if you've got it in norm, it adjusts it automatically based on the passenger numbers you've entered down here. So that's a pretty cool thing. Last but not least, let's head to the takeoff performance, and we can simply send that to the FMS from our OAS, and we can confirm that. Just got to reselect the packs over here. Thrust reduction and acceleration are good. Transition altitude 5000 is correct. On the climb page, we have selected auto derate, and that's everything we need down here. So let's go to the position monitor page. We're going to enter Lima Fox Bravo Oscar 32 left in here. And then we can go back and over to the flight plan page, where we are going to enter the step climbs. So let's go down here to step outs. And I did plan 2 step climbs today to demonstrate that functionality. So let's go on to the OFP and have a look. At Pumal, we're going to climb to flight level 240. So let's select waypoint, Pumal, and flight level 240. Entering that, and at Mamuk, we're going to climb to flight level 310. So waypoint, Mamuk, flight level 310. Enter. Alright, and that's it. So let's go to the temporary and insert that. And then we can go to the flight plan info and the fix info. And over here we can enter our extended runway centerline. So that's LFBO3 to, let's see what the track is. 32 left first of all. And then the runway track is going to be 322. Alright, and that's the extended centerline entered. Now, last but not least, we go to the secondary flight plan, and we are going to import that from the active. Then we go down to flight plan, and first of all, I want my engine outset 25 miles straight, so that's going to be insert next waypoint. Now let's type that with a keyboard. You can do that using the left control key. LFBO32 left /322 /25 miles. Insert that. And after this, we're going to go to new destination, LFBO, and then we can insert an immediate relanding over here, which is going to be on 32 left via an ILS approach. And that's our engine out sit created on the flight plan. Now we could enter a holding and stuff like that, but I'm going to skip over that for the time being. Well, and that's our FMS setup completed. So let's go up to the FCU, where we can dial in at UNH 1019 today. Then we can start to prepare our ANF, airport navigation function down here. At the same time, we can already dial up the FCU to our initial climb altitude, which is going to be 5,000. And then also set up our colleagues, EFIS control panel, like that. Well, and with that, we are done with our setup. I do have to say I like it. I really like it. You can absolutely feel how this is a next generation airliner. Okay, so with all that basic stuff now out of the way, let's go ahead and do a departure briefing, and then we can already prepare our aircraft for today's flight. So nonetheless, before we can do that, we've got to do a briefing, so let's make it a quick one. Alright, we have Toulouse on the runway 32 left via the Reboot 7 Bravo departure, climbing 5,000. The MSA on this one, let's see, is 2,900 feet. And we do have extra fuel on board. Let's see how much. 3.1 tons, which equals 35 minutes. Wonderful, thank you. So hotspots for the taxi routing. I don't really see any. Just gotta be careful up here on the Airbus ramps. Ooh, a little bit of lagging here. Let's just go to window mode and back to full screen. That usually fixes it. Yep, look at that. The lagging is fixed. Okay, so no hotspots. Stop margin in case of rejected takeoff is calculated at 0 meters down here. Engine out sit straight at 25 miles. If you gotta make an immediate return, we're below the maximum landing weight, and well, we've got the factory over here, so there is really no better option. Special operation, I don't have anything. Non-standard operation, I don't have anything. Threats for the departure. It's a brand new aircraft, first flight that we're doing today, so gotta be a little bit careful and see how everything is gonna handle. No guarantees, no certainties. We are on an experimental aircraft over here, so expect the unexpected. That's the key point to take away. Well, and if you have no questions, let's go for the before start checklist down to the line, please. So that's gear pins and covers removed. Fuel quantity 15,000 kilos balanced. Takeoff data set. Barrel ref QNH 1029R. Before start checklist complete down to the line. Okay. Wonderful. So the load sheet is basically on board already. Let's go ahead and prepare the position for pushback and departure. So while that's going on, the beacon is coming on, then let's go down here into the surveillance page, activate the default settings. With that, the transponder and everything comes on. Alright, and then we can do the before start checklist below the line, please. But let's quickly arm the slides. Here we go, slides armed. Alright, doors closed, park and brake is set. Before start checklist complete. And you can see how it changes back to the screen that you've been on before pretty quickly once the checklist is actually completed. I do like that. Alright, so that's everything we had to do down here done. So let's go ahead and talk to the ground crew. Ground from flight deck. Oh, bonjour. Bonjour, please confirm all doors and hatches are closed. The ground equipment is removed and the aircraft is ready for pushback. That's all confirmed. All the equipment is removed and we are connecting the tug right now. Merci. Alright, so we are basically ready to go up here. We'll do a pushback to the left-hand side, and then taxi out via Zulu 2, and via that we're gonna go onto the main taxiways up here. So, for the chart integration to work with Jeppesen charts, you do need a Navigraph subscription. If you don't have that, you can always use the standard Lido charts that come with a simulator, so that's quite cool. And we're ready for pushback, release brakes. Brakes released, and we are standing by for your signal to start the engines. Roger! Oh boy, some French are definitely going to hate me after this video, but that's what it is like over there, for real. Alright, so we are pushing. We are using the Toulouse scenery from Flightbeam, by the way, which is an absolutely wonderful rendition of the airport, and also has a wonderful rendition of the Airbus factory. So, highly recommended if you want to do a flight like this to collect your new aircraft. Otherwise, if you don't want to spend money on anything, there is a very good freeware for Hamburg-Finkenwerder, which is also an Airbus factory, available on flightsim.to, which I can also recommend you to have a look at. Alright, so we are beyond the red line. Let's go ahead and start the engines. So ignition start, gotta wait for 10 seconds before we can actually commence the engine start. That's to avoid some nuanced dispatch messages coming up, which can actually ground your aircraft. And here we go, 10 seconds in, engine 1 start. Now let's go to the outside and take a listen. Gotta love those sounds, huh? I absolutely do. Alright then, back to the inside, and the engine start is now completed. The push is completed as well, so let's set the brakes, and then we can start engine 2. This one we are going to monitor from the inside. So we are first going to see N3 increase. By the way, I do like the low frame rate of the display here, because the values are jumping somewhat, but that's exactly what it looks like on at least the real A320 and A330, so probably the 350 as well. So, we're seeing fuel flow. We do have ignition, the EGT starts to rise. At just over 45% N3, we should see the start valve disengage. And here we are, 45%, and starter disengaged. Very good. So overall, not 100% accurate, but no flight sim aircraft actually is, but very, very close. I like it. That's a good engine start down there. Alright, they're removing the top down there. Let's go ahead and do the after start procedure. Okay then, waiting for the clear signal from the ramp agent, and there he comes, holding a pin in the hands. Thank you very much. After start checklist. Anti-ice, off. After start checklist complete. And again, you can see it closes itself automatically when the checklist is complete. Alright, flight control check. Full up. Full down. Neutral. Full left, full right, neutral, holding the nose wheel steering disconnect button. Let's do the rudder. That's full left, full right, and neutral. Alright, perfect. So, clear on the left side, clear on the right side, no slide on, park and brake off, let's go. So at these very light weights, the aircraft is going to taxi on idle thrust. We don't need to do anything. If we want to expedite things, we can add a little bit of power, but let's just get it rolling on idle over here. Brake check. You can see the pressure over here, so that's brakes okay. You can nicely see the taxi light illuminate down there. The aircraft doesn't have switches for runway turn-off lights because they're integrated with the taxi light switch. You can see the runway turn-off lights actually up here. Oh, that was my AMD CPU glitching there. Those sound glitches, unfortunately, are not a problem of the aircraft, but they did come with my new CPU. Absolutely beautiful, isn't it? Such a cool aircraft to look at. Latest in technology. The absolutely latest. Really loving it. For a very long time, flight simulation used to be mostly older aircraft, never the latest generation. In Flight Sim 2024, that has changed. In 2020, actually, it started already, but look at the aircraft in 2024. And the A350 now really is the latest and greatest that's been added to our virtual fleets. Absolutely loving it. Alright, so we're going to taxi over to the right over here, and that's eventually going to lead us onto the main taxiways. We're clear on the left side, and we are clear on the right side. Let's bring it back down to 10 knots. It is a huge aircraft, so oversteering is absolutely required in order to keep it on the center line. One thing that's unfortunately not simulated is the taxi camera. You can press the button, but nothing shows up here because Flight Simulator at this point doesn't support it. However, I'm kinda hopeful that with Inibuilds, with PMDG, and probably many others requesting this feature from Asobo, that we're eventually going to get it at some point. So we'll turn over to the right hand side over here, and then like that we can taxi to the full length runway 32 left. Good look outside, both sides are clear. Very good. Alright, I have no changes to the takeoff briefing. Anything from your side? No? Wonderful. So, auto brakes, walk, takeoff config. Alright, before takeoff checklist down to the line, please. Flight controls, checked. Flight instruments, checked. Briefing, confirmed. V1, VR, V2 flap setting. So that's V1 146, VR 148, V2 152, config flex at 69. Squawk. Let's see. Yeah, that's set. Before takeoff checklist complete down to the line. Since we've only done the checklist down to the line, it doesn't actually close automatically. We'd have to manually close it and return to the previous page. Okay, so we're clear on the approach. Cabin crew, prepare for departure. Well, we don't have any, but it doesn't matter. Okay, before takeoff checklist below the line. Takeoff runway, 32 left full length. Cabin crew, advised, packs off, checked. Before takeoff checklist complete. So, Toulouse, 32 left. It's been some time since we've been here, but every time I'm getting here, basically whenever a brand new Airbus releases, I'm always enjoying that first lineup. Alright, let's get out of the ANF down here, down to the standard view, and with that, ready to go. Take off. Manflex 69, SRS, runway, auto thrust blue. Thrust set. .100 knots. Checked. It's very easy to keep this aircraft on the center line, unlike many flight sim aircraft. Rotate. Positive climb. Gear up. Now listen to this. Did you hear that little hissing sound at the end? Beautiful attention to detail. Thrust decline, climb auto thrust. And let's put the autopilot on already. Autopilot 1, flap 0, speed checked, flap 0. After takeoff checklist, down to the line please. After takeoff checklist, down to the line complete. It just looks amazing, doesn't it? Alright then, starting the first right-hand turn, let's continue our climb to something like flight level, I think it's 190 that we filed as initial level. Very smooth handling by the autopilot here, smooth turning, smooth pitching, very good for our passengers. So, quick check, transition altitude 5000. I just totally love the display layout here. Having your chart right next to the main displays. Something that I'm really missing on a lot of flight sim aircraft, just because the EFB is always located on the side and it's just not in your primary field of view. That's so much nicer on the A350 flight deck layout. Now we can reset the chrono. We do have an elapsed timer down here. That's starting automatically once the aircraft lifts off. Okay, set standard. Standard cross-check, passing flight level 48 now. Checked. Now you might have noticed that in order to set standard, I actually had to push the button in rather than pull it out. And that's actually not a bug, but a feature. So on the 350 and the 380, Airbus have reversed that logic. Basically, when they now follow the same logic as the FCU buttons. You push it in, it goes to something standard. You pull it out, then you can manually control it. So they kind of adapted that logic. Needs a little bit of getting used to if you are used to your standard A320, A330 aircraft, but really nice addition if you just think about the general Airbus logic that goes into this. Okay, so let's have a look at our route over here. That's the arrival. Forget about that. So we are flying off to the left and then pretty much straight out. So initially, let's have a look at our aircraft systems here. The cruise page is showing. On this we can see our cabin altitude is slowly increasing, differential pressure is increasing, climbing at 400 feet a minute. That makes pretty much sense. Now let's go ahead and have a look at the different ECAM pages. The all button is now located down here. You can see how that brings up this nice little menu there, making it possible for us to switch through all the pages. Look at the fuel flow, almost 7,000 kilos per engine. The door page, everything's looking good. Wheel page, our wheels are retracted and we do have full accumulator pressure. Fuel page, even distribution. Electrics, powered by the standard buses. So basically we're just going over our standard systems over here. Now, something you might have noticed a little bit earlier, on the hydraulic page is that the A350 hydraulics are actually running at 5,000 psi, and the aircraft only has 2 hydraulic systems fitted, instead of the 3 systems that you have on most other airlines. Why is that? Well, the A350 has a lot of electric actuators, or electro-hydraulic actuators, and therefore only needs 2 hydraulic systems as a backup. So we've passed 10,000 feet, let's do our flow. I will keep our seatbelts on since things are gonna get a little bit rough over here. Let's also switch on the weather and the terrain. Forgot to do that while on the ground. And then down here, nothing on the nav aid page, and the optimum and the maximum are well above what we are going to fly to today, so that's completely fine. Alright, so we've accelerated to 290 knots. We might need a little bit of anti-ice here. Yeah, 6 degrees, engine anti-ice on. Now, let's go ahead and start testing our aircraft systems for a little bit. We want to know how good did Inibuilds actually simulate the A350. I was always a little bit skeptical since I thought, well, they surely can't do the most complex airliner currently out there in just over a year. Well, let's find out. So, first things first, let's test some of the Autopilot specialties. You know that on conventional or older Airbus aircraft like the 320 or the 330, the Autopilot basically disengages when you run into protections. On the 350, it's able to resolve most encounters with any aircraft protections. So let's dial the altitude up a little bit, go to vertical speed up here, and let's put it up to 6,000 feet a minute. Now let's see what the aircraft is going to do. Initially, very gentle pitch up, very comfortable for the passengers. Very, very nice. Now, while we're pitching up, we are losing airspeed, and my goal right now is to fly the aircraft right into the low speed protection. And you will see that the Autopilot should resolve that situation. On older Airbus aircraft like the A330 or the A320, it would simply disengage. It couldn't handle that. On the A350, the Autopilot is so resilient that it can handle a lot of possible malfunctions, and even things such as aircraft upsets. Now, we can see it over here. With the trend vector touching VLS, we get the amber box around the vertical speed and the Autopilot in protection mode, enunciated on the PFD. You will see that the aircraft is now lowering its nose. It's no longer following the vertical speed command in order to keep itself outside of VLS. Very good. That's exactly what it's supposed to do. I like that. I like that very much. Even little things such as the Autopilot in protection showing up there. That's a pretty cool thing. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's go right back to climb mode. So thrust, derate, climb, climb. Now, thrust, derate, climb up here is something interesting. So the A320 doesn't have any climb, thrust, derate. The A330 does. So you might already be familiar with that, but the A350 has an even more advanced mode in that it simply goes for auto derate here. And in auto derate it automatically determines how much thrust it actually needs, and Inibuilds did simulate that. And yeah, if you're at a decent weight for a long haul, you will take your half an hour to get up to cruise level. But let's go ahead and remove that, and let's go to full climb thrust. So that's climb. You can see it's adding quite a lot of thrust up here. And that's actually going to increase our rate of climb quite a bit. Or our acceleration, as you want to see fit. Now, let's quickly go down here. New cruise alt level 240. Let's go to the flight plan and quickly remove the first step climb, because we still have the first step in here. And we can just remove that like this and insert. Alright, let's bring it up to speed, up to level 240, and then we are going to do a little bit of air work manually. So we are going to test the manual flight control system. In general, you will remember that the aircraft should roll at about 15 degrees per second at maximum side stick input. It should return the angle of bank when you go too far, and it shouldn't let you bank more than the green marker on the sides over here. So let's see how that is actually going to look in action. And yeah, we can actually do that while we're climbing. So autopilot off. Let's start with a little bit of general maneuvering. So fly direct off. And yeah, let's put the auto thrust off as well. Alright, we'll just keep the thrust in maximum over here, that's fine. So let's start with the general handling of the aircraft. We're almost approaching that left-hand turn over Ribu over here. So let me show it to you like this so that you can see my side stick input versus the aircraft's reaction. So let's start the right-hand turn here. You can see I'm doing a very gentle stick input, and the aircraft starts to roll very gently. I really like that. Let's also pull a little bit in order to maintain that speed. And again, small input, small aircraft reaction. That's really good. Because that's how you fly an Airbus. You don't do this, which many flight simmers unfortunately do. But you don't do that, and then it's gonna fly fine. So let's lower the nose a bit. We've got 1,000 feet to go. Pulling the thrust off, let's attempt to do some accurate manual flight over here. And here we go, a little bit to the right of the center line, that's fine. Let's get it up to 1,000 feet a minute, like that. Very nice. So, in general, if you have flown the Phoenix A320, and if you've flown the Inibuilds A330, then you have surely noticed that the A330 is a lot more sluggish on the controls. That's intentional by Airbus. That's not due to the aerodynamics of the plane. That is how they modeled the fly-by-wire. Now the A350 is a little bit more maneuverable, but you can still feel the general effects of the aircraft. By the way, typical Airbus, climb speed independent of the cruise speed, so yeah, it basically wants us to start reducing our speed now, but we're not going to do that. Let's just go select the 290. Here we are. Alright, now we're going to do a little bit of air work here. So let's do a steep turn to the left, and we're going to check the aircraft's protections while we're doing that. So I'm adding left bank 30 degrees. It should hold that without any problems. So we're at roughly 30 here. I'm letting go of the stick. It's holding. Perfect. Now let's go to 45. When I let go of the stick, it starts to roll back to 30 degrees. Very good. And now let's go full stick to the left and check if the protections are actually working. And here we go. So that's full aft left stick. And you can see, actually worked pretty well. But you can also see that due to the G-loading, the alpha prop speed is coming up rather high. Now I'm letting go of the stick completely, stick neutral. Now look at what the aircraft's doing. Basically, nah, it should not have pitched up that much. Should just have recovered to something like this. Alright, well, it did recover the bank. That's one good point there. Alright, let's bring it back down to flight level 240. And by doing that, we can already test the low pitch protection. So let's push all the way forward. That's full side stick forward. And look at that. 15 degrees, that's it. Now let's go full side stick aft. No more than 2.5 Gs. Very nice recovery. That's how the Airbus fly-by-wire works. I like that. I like that a lot. So the flight control protections are working pretty nicely. And sometimes the aircraft oversteers a little bit, but nothing major. Overall, those protections do work fine. Now let's bring the autoflight system back online. Flight direct on. Let's go heading like 160 and... Here we go. Thrust climb, open climb heading. Come on, 160 I said. Here we go. So, speed out cruise star, autopilot 1. Then let's fly direct to Pumal. So, Pumal, present position direct 2, insert. And all cruise nav. Perfect, so here we are again. So that worked pretty well. I gotta say, the manual handling of the aircraft, it does not fly as precise as an A320, but it is not meant to fly as precise as an A320. It's pretty much designed to fly in a similar manner as the A330, but with a little bit more direct control. So that's pretty good. Alright then. Next up, let's go ahead and test the step climbs. So, if we zoom out a little bit, step functionality is pretty important. And we can see we've entered the step at Mammoth, and you can see it's actually over here. Now let's go ahead and change that to a step climb over at Pumal. So let's just go in here and then step out, and we don't want to do it at Mammoth, but we want to do it at Pumal. And it looks like it doesn't accept that, probably because we can't move it forward. What happens if we just delete it? So delete, enter, and then let's try that. No, not really. No? Okay. Well, that's fine. I had to break it somehow, huh? So let's just keep it at Mammoth. And erase temporary. That's it. Alright, so now I just want to check if some of the aircraft's malfunctions work. So when you go over to the flight ops menu, you can see that it does have some failures. You do of course have the situations up here. If you activate one of these, you must restart the flight later on. So you can't just cancel them. But down here we also have failures. And over here, these can be reset. So that's quite cool. So let's just go ahead and fail something. What do we have here? Yeah, right, main tank pump fault. Let's do that. Okay, fuel right tank main pump fault. And yeah, we can see that over here, that it's turned off. Even though that should have been amber. And we should also see a fault light over here on the right main tank pump. Let's just see. Yeah, that fault light should also have come on over here. In any case, let's do the ECAM actions. So, right tank main pump off. Fuel, right tank main off. You can see it has sensed that. So, clear fuel. Oh, clear fuel. Status. Alright, in-op systems, all phases, right tank main pump. Remove status. Remove. ECAM actions complete. Now you can see you've got the status showing down here, so that if we open the status page manually, then we can see we still see that inoperative system there. Well, let's go ahead and fix that. The right main pump is coming back on. And then fuel right main pump back on again. And now everything is fixed again. I kind of like that, just as a little demonstration there to show you guys how failures would look like in the A350. You can see I did try quite a couple more, and yeah, they are implemented to a certain extent, not fully, but It's pretty nice just to see how the ECAM logic works on the A350. For instance, if you go down here and maybe just do prim 2 fault, flight control, prim 2 fault, and that is up here, and you can see over here we have the fault light, so we can confirm the failure up here on the overhead panel. Okay, ECAM actions, prim 2 off, then on. So confirm, prim 2 confirmed, off, then on. Now, over here you can see it should have sensed that and ticked the item. It didn't, unfortunately, but let's go ahead and continue. We are going to tick this off, that we have done this. So now it asks us, prim reset successful, yes or no? Since the fault still shows, and we still have the fault light up here as well, we're gonna select no over there. And then prim 2 off. So confirm, prim 2 confirmed, off. And that as well should be automatically sensed. So you can see failures are there to a certain extent. Nice to see how the system works, but not really implemented fully. And you can see that prim fault actually gives us quite a couple of limitations and inoperative systems there. But let's go ahead and fix that. It's a brand new aircraft after all. And here we go. Now it's fixed, status shows normal again, perfect. Okay, so we're approaching the step climb, and you can see down here, where you see step ahead, and on the performance page you can also see that on the cruise page, you see your distance to the step climb, rather than the distance to the top of descent. That's correct Airbus logic. If you want to know your distance to the top of descent, then you got to go to the flight plan page and find the pseudo waypoint here, and you can get your information from right down here. Good to know, to have that in mind, how that stuff works in Airbus logic. Now the Airbus is not going to step climb on its own, unless you go over here into the options. Over here you can see under simulation you do have the auto step climb option. I did try that, and yes, it actually auto step climbs perfectly when reaching a pre-entered step climb, so that's really nice. If you just want to do a flight overnight, you don't have to put the alarm clock up in order to do your step climb. Okay, so up to flight level 310, dial it up, and then thrust climb, climb, all cruise flight level 310 blue. So now it wants to accelerate again to the climb speed. Again, that is correct Airbus logic, even though it is, I don't know, annoying? Don't want to call it incorrect, so let's just call it annoying. Alright, so while all of that is happening, let's take a moment to go over all the company options that are available in the Inibuilds Airbus A350, because we have lots of them. So starting up here on the general aircraft menu, we can decide on the alignment time of the IRS, we can link the controls, which is really nice. I use Captain and FO so that my QNH gets synchronized, only have to do it on one side. The rudder can control the tiller, and you can also control your aircraft's weathering, which is quite nice. Also the display type, you can see I've got the old displays fitted here. You can also go to the new ones, but they cost 50,000 bucks more per unit. So yeah, airlines somewhat tend to order the old ones. On the OIS setting, we can control a couple of things, such as which charts do we want to use, do we want to have auto transition between night and day charts, the aircraft's weight, and most importantly the EFB boot time. Now that is one, if you set that to real, the thing is going to take at least 3 minutes to boot up. And that's a thing when you load the aircraft up cold and dark, you want to prepare it for flight, and it just, well, needs a long time to load up here. And eventually, if you're proficient in your procedures, it's actually going to lead to a situation where you've got to sit there and wait for the thing to boot up because you can't do anything else. Other options available down here in the equipment options, lots of nice things. Standby nav display, that controls whether you see the standby nav display over here or whether that goes away. Taxi camera lights, do you have an ADF installed, do you have a SATCOM on the aircraft, and so on. Now, what I like the most is that liveries come with pre-configured sets. So if I'm about to download a Lufthansa livery from the Inibuilds manager, then it's gonna have the correct Lufthansa configuration. So that's really, really cool. Again, down here you can control which sharklet types you want installed, if your aircraft has fuel jettison, and so on, and so on, and so on. So lots of very good things that you can control here. On the third-party options, you can enter your SimBrief ID, your hobby code, and synchronize your nav data. And last but not least, on the simulation page, you got things such as auto step climb, you have automatic time compression up to how much it shall go. So you have a lot of the options that a good long-haul aircraft needs to have. That's pretty nice. So overall, in my opinion, the OAS does look different from the real-world Airbus unit, of course, but I think Inibuilds have done a really nice job on that and gave us a really nice OAS with lots of good functions down here, such as the ground service menu, the load sheet where you can load the aircraft up. You can view your SimBrief OFP, you can do your takeoff performance, your landing performance, which we'll get to in a few moments. You can view your charts, and you can also view your en route charts. Now, en route charts, if we do start zooming in and out here, then yeah, they are quite nice to have. But up to you. Alright, so I want to try an experiment. Let's first of all go for engine ATIs off here because the temperature has risen below -40. Now I want to try something. I want to see if we can somewhat force the aircraft a little bit out of the normal operations to see how deep Inibuilds actually simulated some of the systems. So let's go on a vertical speed mode here as we're approaching our cleared altitude. And then what I'm going to do is 1000 to go. I will turn off the packs and see what's going to happen. So both packs are off. You can see that on the bleed air page, but what I really want to see is our actual cabin pressurization. So let's go to the cabin press page. And we can see the cabin is climbing. Now, let's see how quickly it will be climbing without the packs operating. 400 feet is probably a little bit too little. Would expect something around 700 to 1000 feet a minute or so. So let's view that on the bleed page again. No more pressure in here, the packs are off. But I think I should have started that test a little bit later here, since the cabin basically needs to climb right now anyway. But let's just see. If we go to cabin, vertical speed mode, manual, and just increase that a bit. Is there any system response? Yeah, okay. So yeah, we can kind of see the system still responds to pilot inputs here. Of course it shouldn't do that with the bleeds off, so the bleed system is maybe a little bit simplified here. Well, let's go ahead and turn them back on. Cabin pressurization also back to auto. And now everything comes back under automatic control. Okay, so as you can see, under normal operations, the aircraft works pretty well and does most of the things that it is supposed to do, with only some minor deviations. But when you take it out of the normal into some abnormal stuff, then yeah, it's not study level, we can say that, but it's very good for normal operations level. I think we can definitely say that, as we've seen by going a little bit into the abnormal stuff on this flight right here. So that out of the way, the top of descent is approaching in 25 miles. Let's go ahead and start preparing for our arrival. So let's go to ATC.com, D-ATIS, update all. And that's automatically going to download the latest weather. Here we are. D-ATIS received. So Toulouse, wind 140 at 9, cavalcade 10 degrees, 1029, becoming 4,000 meters in Broome, broken 300. Becoming means within the next 2 hours, so the weather is getting worse. So it is time we do something about that. Now, with the winds 140 at 9, we can most certainly start to prepare an ILS approach to runway 14 rather than runway 32 as we had planned by SimBrief. So that's probably going to be top to 8 Sierra arrival then. Yep, that certainly looks like it. So we're going to pin the top to 8 Sierra, and for the approach itself, let's have a look at the airport chart. We're going to be landing on runway 14 right down here. So approach on off initial 14 right, let's pin that one. And ILS 14 right final approach, let's also pin that one. Here we go, then we can get rid of the runway 32 and the SID. So here's everything we need. So let's now reprogram our FMS. First things first though, secondary import active. That way we have a backup of our flight plan. And now, flight plan, LFBO, runway 14 right with an ILS approach. We've got the top 28 Sierra, and that one ends at Suras. So that's in here, temporary and insert. Alright. So that should also push the top of descent out a little bit, but it's recalculating right now. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's take a shortcut direct towards top 2. So direct 2, can select that from the list down here. And we will take a beam point and insert. Alright, proceeding direct towards top 2 now. I'm kind of thinking whether we should just take a direct into the downwind down here, making things a little bit easier, cutting them short a little bit. Yeah, let's actually do that. Direct to, what's that one up here? Ogrel. And we can actually select that up here, and then go present position direct 2. Here we go, and we will take a beam points, insert, here we go. So that's really nice that you can do this stuff on the nav display as well. Basically, I just wanted to show that off. Alright, guess that worked. So, let's go ahead and have a look. We are inbound to Ogrel now. That's maximum 250 knots. And that's below level 260. Then we have Sulit below flight level 140. Suras above flight level 80. Then let's go for the on-off initial approach to 14 right. From Suras, we proceed via the Bravo Oscar 507 point. Onto the final approach for the ILS, so basically towards the India Oscar 14 right. From there we can join the ILS 14 right chart. Final approach point is the Fox 14 right, that's the descent point, and that's what we've got down here as well, in 3000, 3-degree glide path, and the missed approach straight at 5.1 dm Toulouse, left turn 016, join the radio 331 outbound Tango Oscar Echo. Caution, fake signals along the glide path slope before the final approach point, so we've got to arm the approach mode fairly late on this one. Alright. So let's quickly check that the missed approach looks correct down here, and I think we can certainly say it does. Okay, very good. So that's our basic flight plan check. Then let's go over to the performance. 14 miles to the top of descent, so things are gonna go quick. On the descent page, our speed is checked and looking good. Now on the approach page, let's go ahead and enter the weather that we've just requested. We'll start with a wind, that's 140 at 9. What I really like is how you can see the cursor just jumps to the next correct position. So you can basically just type all that stuff in here, and it is just gonna do all the cursor positioning for you. I really do like that. Now, it doesn't do that on all pages, unfortunately, but that's something that I have asked Inibuilds to improve. Alright, we are going to do a config, well, tell you what, it's a maintenance check flight, so we are going to do config 4. Then MSA 3000, go around altitude 4000 at first. So let's say engine out acceleration is going to be 3000 then. No, that's 300, that's too little. 3000. Okay, perfect. On the position monitor page, we are going to select the landing runway. That is LFBO14 right. Enter, and that's it. Perfect. So with that, we have prepared our FMS. Now, let's start our descent already, and thereafter we can start to prepare the ANF. Now, since we're descending into the clouds, engine anti-ice on, and then let's start to prepare the ANF. We'll go down to the zoom, and here we go. So, down here we can see our landing runway, 14 right, and that one can be marked by clicking on it, set landing runway. Now, you have two calculations over here, and that's from the brake to vacate system. So, you have the distance it needs if the runway is dry, and then you have the distance it needs if the runway is wet. Now, Airbus does recommend that you use that you select an exit that's at or beyond the wet distance in order to make it a little bit more comfy for your passengers. However, you don't have to. Today we basically want to vacate Sierra 6, so let's go ahead and select Sierra 6, set BTV exit, and that gives us all the BTV information on the top over here. Really nice and really well implemented. Now let's select the auto brake button down here, and you can see that arms the auto brake in brake to vacate mode. So brake to vacate is basically going to apply braking in a way that the aircraft is going to reach the exit at a typical speed required to exit the runway. Really nice. Again, for this to work, you do need a Navigraph subscription. Alright, so that much about our approach preparation. So let's go ahead and do the approach briefing then. Okay, thank you very much. So we're in to Sulit, and via a couple of on-off points we're eventually going to turn onto the ILS approach runway 14 right. The MSA is 3000 and the minimum 668. In case of go-around, we proceed straight ahead round about 5 miles and then a left turn out, climbing at first to 4000, later on to 8000, or flight level 80. Extra fuel and time, let's see what we have got down here. So, fuel and load, 3.6 tons extra, which equals 41 minutes. Perfect. And that's all that we needed down here. Alright, the approach will be flight director guided. We'll probably leave the autopilot on for a little bit due to the low cloud forecast. Landing config full, stop margin, well, should be more than plenty, but let's actually go down here into the landing performance. Synchronize from FMS, synchronize the weather. It's a dry runway, config full, and let's select auto brake medium up here. You cannot calculate brake to vacate. That does its own calculations that we've seen on the top of the screen over here. So what's happening now? Thrust descent, 2600 above the profile. Wondering why that is. Alright, so let's compute the landing distance, and you can see our stop margin right down here, 1769 meters. We will use reversers to check that they're operating, and we are going to vacate the runway to the right hand side with BTV. No hotspots for the taxi in, and I have nothing special on non-standards. Prep for the arrival? Nothing really, huh? Alright, that's our arrival briefing complete. So those clouds here are pretty bright, aren't they? Let's go ahead and get those sunshades up. So, pretty much like that. I like them. I really like those sunshades. Look at how much of the window they actually cover. That's a pilot's dream come true. There is nothing worse than a low sun, regardless whether it's sunrise or sunset, shining right in your eyes. The way these are designed, when you're in cruise, they pretty much cover the horizon, so the sun can't really be below this level unless you're climbing, but so be it. Alright, so while we're descending towards Toulouse, let's go down to 10,000. While we're doing that, let's take a quick moment to go back into the passenger cabin. Because that is another point of the A350 really worth pointing out. Let's open up that door. So, if you do need to go to the toilet, you can do that, but... okay. You can't flush it. But you can't open it, can you? I mean, perfectly fine for flights into certain regions. On certain routes, you know that they're only gonna shit next to the toilet anyway. But that is not a joke, by the way. But yeah, okay. So let's close that door again. Where is that click spot? Here it is. Where is it? No? Here? Yeah, that's it. A little bit hard to find. So, something that I really like, you can open and close those curtains leading into the different areas of the passenger cabin. The cabin generally is very well modeled. It's just looking great. Let's take a seat here on a business class seat and see what things look like. So, this is going to be your home for 15, 16 hours at a time. The PSU up here is the only one thing that I think could need a little bit more detail, but apart from that, the cabin itself looks absolutely fantastic. Just look at the windows over here. I like them, I really do. Also the detailing around the business class seats down here, the safety card. It's nice, isn't it? It's really nice. Now, let's go back. Now, some people have asked me about the labeling of the business class seats. Because it seems strange that you've got 5 Charlie, then you have 6 Alpha, and so on. I can actually explain that one. So, on many Airbus widebodies, you have Alpha and Charlie on the outer business class seats. No Bravo, since that would only appear in a 3-class layout, or in a 3-seat layout. So, since the seat over here is marked Alpha, it's the window seat. This one over here, however, is moved a little bit further inward and therefore is marked Charlie. The same applies to the seats in the middle and on the other end side. So some people asked me about that and I thought I would explain that. So moving further to the back then, let's go ahead and go into the second galley over here. And here we are, let's close that curtain. And that is what it looks like. Really well modeled, I like it. The only one thing that they really gotta tell us is which of those boxes is the box with all the snacks in it. Because that's something that we absolutely need to know, otherwise the aircraft is absolutely unflyable. So let's go a little bit further back over here. Very nice look out at the wing, at the engine. I like it. I really do. So then, let's head back towards the flight deck. If you've seen that part of the cabin, you've seen the others. So, I'm sure there will be someone who does a very detailed cabin tutorial, but that is not for me. As mentioned, the only important thing that I care about in the cabin is which of those boxes is the snack box. Because that's the really important question here. Especially when you're flying as third pilot, so if you're the one sitting on the jump seat on a flight, the snack box is the utmost importance. If you don't know where that is, and the espresso machine by the way, you've also got to know where that one is to be found. then yeah, your colleagues ain't gonna like you. Alright, let's close that up. So the coffee machine is located right over here. Hot water over here in case someone needs some tea. Well, and with that out of the way, let's quickly go further up front again and explore one more thing, and that is going to be the cockpit crew rest area. Just a quick check over here if we are still on profile. Yeah, that's looking good, huh? Let's go down to, yeah, 10,000. We do have some 2 or 3 minutes like this, so let's quickly have a look into the cockpit crew rest area. That one's located just next to the flight deck so that you have quick access. At the time of this recording, using the beta version that I'm using here, you can't open the door, but you can go through it, and then you actually have the full cockpit crew rest, which is really nice. Really spacey as well. I wish we had that in our A330s. It does have cockpit crew rest, the A330, but absolutely uncomparable. The nicest thing of all is that in the crew rest area over here, you have active noise reduction. So when you're in here, things actually go super quiet and you can sleep really well. Also, do note that seat you have over here so that you can read something. You do have a table over here. I think you can actually fold one out somewhere, in the real plane at least. And then you've got the food hatch over here, but yeah, don't tell Airbus that I called it a food hatch. Don't tell anyone. Alright, and that is a brief overview of the cabin. Let's go ahead and close that up again. One more thing that we can take a look at, if we really want to, is the avionics compartment. But for that, we've got to be... Wait a moment, we've got to retract the jump seat, and then we can actually open it up and go down here. So, let's have a look at that. Here we are, and down here we have all the aircraft's computers. We've got the main batteries over here, number 1 and 2. And then we have the emergency batteries on the other end side. And you also have that little door into the cargo compartment here. Unfortunately not modeled in this beta, but I do hope they are going to do that. Because you can see you do have the cargo compartment available right over here. So that stuff is modeled, so it would only be logical if they eventually add that door as well. Really nice modeling down here, but a little bug in the real one. Going up to the front you can actually see the weather radar antenna. On this one, Inibuilds unfortunately simplified that, but let's not complain about it. This is actually looking pretty cool. Alright, and let's close that up. Here we go. Alright, well, and that is a look at the cabin and the avionics compartment in the Inibuilds A350. We're about to reach 10,000. Let's go ahead and start working on our flight. So we are going to descend to flight level 80. Then we can get rid of all those sunshades here again. Come on, you close up. You close up. And you two as well. Right, perfect. So, passing 10,000, landing lights on, seatbelts on, EFIS CP is set, and LS is selected. And with that, let's go into the checklists down here. So, of course, I forgot the after takeoff checklist below the line, because, well, we don't have an after takeoff checklist anymore in the real world. Okay, so, approach checklist down to the line. Briefing, confirmed, minimum, that's 668 set. Approach checklist complete down to the line. So, while we're down here on our way into the approach, let's just do another flight control system test here. Turn everything off, get the speed brake out. I'm just going to extend the downwind here a little bit. So, Alt star heading. Let's intercept 8,000 feet. And then I just want the aircraft to lose all its speed in order to see if the low speed protections are working. We forgot about those earlier on. So just want to see that in action. Maintaining 8,000. Again, the flight model shows a little bit of delay to the response. Take a good look at my sidestick input versus when the aircraft reacts. Input now, react, you know, half a second later. Now, a bit of lag like this actually exists in the A330, so I wouldn't be surprised if the 350 has some of it as well. Alright, retracting the speed brake, you can nicely see that down here. And then we are reaching VLS, nothing should happen. Yep, gentle descent here because of course we are losing speed, so let's just pitch it up to correct for that. And then we have Alpha Prot and Alpha Max down here. Alpha Prot, the aircraft should pitch down, but we should be able to override it with the side stick. Alpha Max, we can't even override that anymore. Let's just pull up a little bit more to maintain those 8,000. And here we go, entering Alpha Prot. Yeah, no thanks, back to idle. Of course the aircraft tries to prevent me from doing stupid things, and this is most certainly something the aircraft thinks I'm stupid to do. But let's just do it. So here we are in Alpha Prot, and you can see I can hold it. But now, let's pull it all the way to Alpha Max. Here we are. And you can see even with the stick fully back, plane gradually takes its nose down in order to keep me at the Alpha Max speed. Alright, let's release that. Also bring auto thrust back online. Come on. So, lever climb, then let's go down to 5,000. Here we go. Right, then we can turn off to the right. Okay, thrust idle. Autopilot. Turn heading 060. And go down to 3,000. So, set QNH. QNH 1029, cross-check, passing 6,800 now. So, that's a little bit dynamic, my friend. Please correct. Look at that, it's doing it. Engine anti-ice off, and approach checklist below the line, please. Barrel ref, QNH 10290. Approach checklist complete. Alright, extend the center line, please. We can do that from the Fox. Course in, 142, looks splendid. Here we go. Then you can see, with the extended center line, it's armed nav mode, so that it's basically going to intercept the final all on its own. I like that. I like that very much. As per the chart, we're not going to trust the glide slope until we reach the Fox. That's completely fine with me. So, looking over there, Toulouse is probably just below those showers over there. Even though I think I can make the airport out over here. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. So if the weather is that good, let's do it manually. So, nav mode is armed, but we are still flying on the heading, and as soon as the aircraft determines we gotta start that turn to intercept the final track that we've programmed, nav mode is gonna engage, and now we can follow it nicely. The flight controls, as mentioned, do need a little bit of getting used to, but once you get the hold of it, they're actually pretty fine. Right, let's arm the localizer mode here. Lock blue. Localizer alive. Lock star. So we should be able to intercept the final without much of an overshoot. Yeah, tiny little overshoot here. That's kind of fine. Alright. So, activate approach phase. Lock. The glide slope actually looks quite okay over there, so approach is armed. Getting a little bit turbulent here, but nothing too significant. That's all right.
2,500.
Check. Speed hold start. So, a little difference here. You can actually see where the aircraft wants you to start extending your flaps. So, let's just lose a little bit more speed. And then let's go flaps 1. Speed checked, flaps 1. Now listen to this. Flaps 1 is the only flap setting that you can actually hear when it's extending. The others, you can't hear them. And apparently that's correct to the real aircraft, they say. So, glide slope start. Around altitude 4000 set. So landing elevation is 500 feet. For this reason, let's already go flaps 2 and gear down. So the aircraft is tossed around quite a bit by the winds. Now I can't speak for the A350, but if it flies by any means similar to the A330, then that is probably actually realistic. The A330 really gets tossed around quite a lot. Right, flaps 3, speed checked. Tiny bit above the glide here, that's why it's taking so long to lose that airspeed. But we only got to be stable at 1,500 feet, so I'm fine with that. Right, flaps full. Landing checklist. Cabin crew advised, auto thrust, speed, auto brake, BTV, runway condition is dry. Landing checklist complete.
1,000.
Yeah, not yet. Still have 100 feet to go to the gate. And here we go. Speed is within 10 knots. We do have some thrust on, so we are stabilized. Barely just, but stabilized. That's all that counts. So you'll see a couple nice things during the landing. The ANF is automatically going to come on. That's the airport navigation function on our nav display. At least I think it should. Been a little while. I might be confusing it with the A380 right now, but I think it should come on. Apart from that, the biggest difference between landing the A350 and landing your other Airbuses is that your convention or your older Airbus introduces a pitch down moment at some altitude. The 350 doesn't do that. So you really just can't use your previous muscle memory, but you simply pull the nose up a bit and then just maintain the stick there. Don't keep pulling back, but just maintain it. And that's how you land an A350. Checked.
Minimum.
Continue.
100. 50. 40.
So,
30.
slight pull.
20.
Retard.
10.
Beautiful. And you can see ANF comes on automatically. Okay, spoilers, reverse, BTV. Again, very easy to maintain the aircraft on the center line. I like that a lot. Alright, and here's our exit. You can see how perfectly BTV brings us right to the exit at a very good speed. So now I'm disengaging it at about 30 knots. That's roughly the correct speed where to disengage BTV. And you can see we're reaching the exit absolutely perfectly. Very, very well done. Alright, and with that we are vacating that runway. So our technical acceptance flight was a full success. We are going to go over a more detailed feedback a little bit later. For the time being, let's go ahead and clean the aircraft up and taxi it in. You can see I'm no longer heading to the factory complex, I'm heading to the delivery complex right over here. Alright, the APU is starting. After landing checklist, please. After landing checklist complete. I'm probably going a little bit fast right now. Well, it is 10 knots, feels faster. Alright, and that's our first flight in the Inibuilds Airbus A350 completed. So let's bring it right to the delivery complex so that we can take delivery of our brand new aircraft. Now, I am going to wait a little bit with our final words here on my first impression of the aircraft. Let's test something else first. Normally we'd have to wait until the APU is running before we can do single engine taxi, but I just want to demonstrate it. So let's just shut down number 2. APU is going to be there in just a few moments. And you can see, even with an engine shut down, it rolls perfectly. And that's exactly what I wanted it to do. So single engine taxi, very well modeled in the Inibuilds Airbus A350. We're going to see it in a moment as we will turn into the Airbus delivery ramp here. So speed down to 8 knots. Remember, we're at a normal landing weight, 188 tons right now. And here we go. Let's turn into the gate. Gotta make sure that you keep it above 5 knots. A little bit of thrust might be needed when you're going through a turn like this. But overall, very well controllable. As you can see, maintains 2 knots perfectly with some 35% N1. Now 35% N1 is already quite a bit. So gotta be a little bit careful there that you don't use too much. And here we are. So the weather radar is off and the lights off. And here we are. Let's bring it to a stop. Park and brake set, APU bleed on, and shut down. Cabin crew, all doors and park. Gotta remember we gotta do that ourselves in here. Alright, running down nicely, looking good. Alright, parking checklist please. External lights set, park and brake or trucks, brake set, transponder. I knew I forgot something. Transponder, standby. Parking checklist complete. And there we have it, my friends. The Inibuilds Airbus A350. A beautiful aircraft. A really beautiful aircraft. So let's talk about the most important aspects of the aircraft here. And we are going to start with the modeling. It's Inibuilds, what do I need to say? It's superb inside and out, including the cabin. And all of that, while it is actually maintaining a pretty good frame rate on my system. So it's limited to 60 FPS, and it's basically maintaining that all the time. So very, very well done on that front. Now, systems. As long as you're sticking to normal operating procedures, they do what they're supposed to do 95% of the time. So that's pretty good. Now, it's not study level. We've seen that if we went into the abnormals, or if we just did something like turning the bleeds off, yeah, then it starts showing that it's not a study level aircraft. But for the type of flight simming that the vast majority of flight simmers are doing, it's very well suited. It has everything you need during normal operations, almost at least. Few things here and there, but Inibuilds is aware of them. And remember, I'm recording this one with a pre-release version, so those things might always change for the actual release. Sounds, well, I like the sounds. I think they could be a little bit more lively though. There is something that makes them sound a little bit synthetic in my opinion, but people are so different on how they perceive sounds in Flight Simulator that I think it's really best if you make up your own opinion about them. What I can say is the typewriting instructor, whom I done a little bit of preparation with, did like the sounds. He thought they were a little bit loud though, but that is something you can change on the OIS, so you can always adapt that. Now let's talk about the taxi model, because that is a part of the aircraft that I do like. However, I need to point out that you gotta be careful with your tiller inputs. The plane is pretty responsive. I'm not sure how realistic that is, because I never just made a rapid full tiller input on any aircraft in the real world, so I don't really know how it would react. But if you do decent, appropriate inputs, it taxis pretty well. You can somewhat compare it to the Inibuilds A330 there, actually. Now, flight model, the fly-by-wire needs a little bit of getting used to. It's not as direct as your Phoenix A320 is, and that's probably realistic, but it's hard to say. It is pretty easy to get the aircraft into some oscillations, especially on very short final, because of that little input delay that it has in the flight controls. Again, that might be realistic, it might just be down to technique, proper handling technique, so by all means, whatever you do, don't do this, okay? Don't do that. It's not going to end well. An Airbus is flown like this. That's the type of input you do, not this. You wouldn't do this with other things either, would you? Alright, and well, that basically sums up the Inibuilds Airbus A350. Would I recommend it? Absolutely, without any hesitation. It's a beautiful aircraft, you gotta give it a try. And with that, full disclosure, of course I did get a free pre-release copy from Inibuilds, but I think it's really fair to say that while the aircraft does have some issues here and there, it does have quite a couple of bugs that you encounter in normal operation as well. Inibuilds already has some long lists of mine, but they are very open to fixing those things. Ubaid actually put me in direct contact with some of his developers so that I can work directly with them to fix stuff, so very open to doing that. So I'm really thinking, even in the release version... Yeah, thank you. Even though that was a little bit strange that he's doing those announcements now, let's actually shut that stuff down. Thank you. Alright, so... for an initial release version, it's in a pretty good shape. We've seen much, much worse releases. We might have seen some that were a tad more complete, but overall, it's working pretty well. A couple bugs here and there during the normal SOPs, but nothing too significant that would hold the fun of flying. And overall, it's just superb to see a modern airliner in such a high detail iteration. And I think that's really the verdict that we can complete this video with. So, absolute purchase recommendation. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to leave your feedback in the comments underneath the video. I'm very interested to hear what you think about the A350. And with that out of the way, thank you very much for watching. As always, be sure to like, comment and subscribe. New A350 content, including full tutorials, is going to come up very, very soon. But for the time being, thank you very much for watching, and I'm looking forward to see you all again on the next one.